Welcome to my studio. This is where I work professionally as an audio engineer, and I have clients coming up in this room to record and produce music. It also functions as a podcast studio and also as a video editing room for my YouTube videos. In this video, I just want to focus on the audio side of things. So my story as an audio engineer starts when I was in junior high. I started learning the guitar, but I didn't really enjoy playing other people's tune. As a creative individual, I started recording my own songs into a cassette tape using my cassette player with a record function. Really basic, really primitive, but it worked. Soon the cassette tape was replaced by a MD cassette, but still, I was not able to do multi-track recording. I thought I was a genius when I figured out a way to record multi-tracks by using one MD player and one MD recorder. I would play the recording that I just recorded in the background as I record the new track into the MD recorder. This primitive way of recording multi-tracks opened up my horizon into a new realm of music production, although the audio quality was really bad. As I graduated high school in 2008, my father gave me a hand-me-down laptop which had decent specs, decent enough to install and run a DAW. As a poor college student, I couldn't afford a full-fledged DAW, but I found free softwares and free plugins that taught me the basics of MIDI editing and creating beats with MIDI. As a birthday gift, I was given a MW10C, which is a Yamaha mixer with an audio interface built in. An audio interface was a game changer for my music production since my audio recording was done through the built-in audio input of my PC, which had a lot of noise. I created my very first EP using this setup, plus a Behringer dynamic microphone.
Hello YouTubers, this is Mamiya Matsura. So this is my little studio right here, Sony Audio Technica. This is my laptop right here. You can see the desktop picture. That's my fiance right there.
I got married in 2010, and my wife and I had a new life in the Philippines. We lived in a small student dormitory, and when I say small, I mean it. The bed and the kitchen was in the same room. The room was old, and often when we had heavy rain, we had leakage. But we were happy, and I was excited to create my quote-unquote home studio in one of the corners of this room. By this time, I upgraded my DAW to Samplitude 11 Producer. It was a big deal for me paying for a DAW which costs around $250, but I was very happy with the audio quality and the editing capabilities. I also upgraded my audio interface, which I snatched from my father when I was in Japan, and I brought it back to the Philippines. As we were students in an international university, we were fortunate to meet a lot of musicians from all over the world. Being a rapper myself, I enjoyed collaborating with other singers. The whole school soon took notice of my talent as a recording artist, and soon I started attracting a lot of singers and instrumentalists, both professional and hobbyists, but I soon became the recording engineer for the whole school. I did everything for free, and it was a joy for me to collaborate and record for other artists. I was fascinated and intrigued by the unlimited possibilities that a DAW can offer, and I kept on recording for other individuals and bands out of pure joy for helping them out in their music production journey. In 2011, I did my first professional work as a beat maker. I produced 7 tracks out of 8 for a hip-hop mixtape of a friend of mine. At first, I did hesitate to ask someone for money. My rate was $40 for a custom beat, which I would never do today, but it gave me an experience as a beat maker and taught me how hard it is to create a beat that my client desires. Plus, I was paid, and I invested back into my music production. In the same year, I was able to upgrade my PC, which had a first generation Core i7 and a graphics card. The first laptop that I bought with my own money was a gaming PC. I also bought an MPK Mini from Akai, which I bought as a substitute to an MPK 25, which I really wanted but couldn't afford for a lack of budget. After all, I was a poor college student.
Of the nation, the cry for complete liberation.
The next major shift happened when my wife and I decided to move back to Japan. Since we moved into an apartment that had multiple rooms, I dedicated one room for music production. It was a dream come true to me, and I was excited to build the studio from ground up. I had a day job as a caregiver, so I started investing more into my studio equipment. The first thing I got was a pair of monitor speakers from Behringer. It was cheap, both the price tag and the sound quality. But it was something that I couldn't use in the student dormitory where they had thin walls. I also bought myself Native Instruments Machine Micro, which I couldn't fall in love with the workflow. Another upgrade that is worth mentioning is that I got a condenser mic, Rode NT1A. I felt an instant boost in my audio recording quality. As far as DAW, my DAW of choice has become Ableton Live 8, which soon got replaced by Ableton Live 9, which I use up to this day.
唱えよ君の名前名前
こんにちは、間宮です。今日はスタジオで録音をしてます。これからレコーディングに行きます。では、レコーディングしていきます。
We moved again, and we moved into a house that had a bigger room than the first one. The challenge was soundproofing, since the house was 40 years old and was built in a Japanese traditional style. This meant replacing the traditional Japanese sliding doors that are made out of paper and replacing them with real walls to isolate the studio from the rest of the house, and blocking the windows filled with glass wool to prevent sound both coming in and out of the studio.
Alright.
I acquired more gear to fill this new studio and to make my producer life easier, such as a keyboard, a full-size MIDI keyboard from Akai APC40, which was perfect for Ableton Live's session view. It was during this time when I started to get interested into hardware music production. The notion of working with your hands and not staring at this computer screen was appealing to me, since that was how I started making music in the first place. This was the beginning of my hunt for the perfect, portable music production hardware. Going DAWless led me to a rabbit hole of the world of synthesizers. And to start learning synthesis, I bought a micro Korg. I eventually sold this gear because I thought it was too much menu diving and less hands-on. As a side note, this is when I started building a live stream environment in my studio.
Party! って言ってみましょうか。いきますよ。Party girls party! Woo! Party man! では行きますね。
はい、筋トレします。
We did move a couple of times after this, but aside from the room size of the studio, it was all basically the same. My home studio was intended for personal use and not for professional recording for clients since I had a day job, although I would have friends coming in from time to time for recording.
In the studio with Josh.
ならば人生天地逆転そのために一度死んでる新しくなって今を生きてる
It is only when we moved to Okinawa, Japan, that I started a recording studio for business. We found a very small studio apartment that was a studio and a residence at the same time. The apartment had only one bedroom, so I decided to plug in all my gear in the living room and called it my home studio. Later on, I noticed that the living room walls was closest to my landlord's room. I made a decision to transfer my studio to the bedroom. Don't ask me where we slept. As a musician myself, I would go out to live houses, make connections with other artists, and invite them to my home studio to record and work together. We had a lot of artists coming into our studio, rappers, singers. We did crazy things like home concert, live streaming at the same time, hosting parties where we have 20 people crammed up in the room. It was yakiniku and the smoke was terrible. Through word of mouth, I started attracting musicians and bands to record and help their project. In 2018, my wife and I started a music label. We signed 3 artists and started working with them. Life was busy, and sometimes my wife couldn't go to sleep until 3 a.m. because we were doing a recording session in the studio, which also functioned as our bedroom.
I see what you mean. Man, it is amazing to work with Tim and Mamiya in the studio. It's completely, man, next level and super, super fun. So.
Our crazy life in this studio apartment lasted for 3 years, until one day, an acquaintance of ours offered a decent house to live with multiple rooms, a little yard, but most importantly, privacy. So in January 2020, we moved into this new house, which is our current house, where we have enough room, not only for the home studio, but a decent sized living room where I now teach music production. I'm quite happy with my setup now, and although it's the bare minimum, I'm able to do most of my client work, as well as my own music endeavors as a recording musician and content creator. Okay, to wrap it up, if there's one thing that someone can learn from my experience and the evolution of my home studio, in the beginning, work for free and gain experience. I can't count how many times I worked for free before I started charging for work. So if you're an aspiring recording engineer, I want to advise you to hone your skill by working on free projects. Another advice that I can give to someone is that skill, passion, and creativity beats gear and equipment any day of the week. I find that limitation brings forth creativity, and you'll find a way to work around the limits. So instead of worrying how many gear you don't own, try to focus on what you can do with the existing gear that you have. I'm taking up a challenge to downscale my gear so that I can work with the minimal gear that I have and get the most out of it. So don't be quick to upgrade your gear and rely on your gear before you try to solve the problem using your creativity. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope you got something out of this video. Personally, I enjoyed making this video. It took me 2 days to edit this because I had to go back into some of the old files in my hard drive to pull out videos that are more than 10 years old. Watching videos of myself like 10 years ago really took me back in those days, and when I was, really passionate and really created a lot of music with very little gear. That's something I take for granted today with the gear that I own today, because I have to admit that I'm not using the maximum potential of the gear that I have today. Whereas back then, I would squeeze out all the juice out of my gear, you know what I mean? So that's something that I miss, the passion, the creativity, which I still have to this day, but it was different back then, you know what I mean? So I hope you can relate to this. So I hope you got something out of this video, regardless of the stage of where you're at in the journey of creating your own home studio. But if you like contents like this, and if you like MMA and kickboxing, because that's what I do today, well, consider subscribing, and also give me a thumbs up if you like the content. Also, give me some comments. I'll be happy to reply back. So, all right. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Mamiya checking out. Peace.